Yo, what's up, all you cryptids, aliens, and goblins out there? I'm your host, Michael, with co-host here, Matt. Welcome, Matt.
How we doing, everyone?
Yo, we're here filming an all-new, brand-new pilot episode. Really excited to show you a different side of Wicked and kind of tell you a little bit more about why we're interested in this stuff, and then kind of just go into a free-form conversation tonight about unexplained phenomena. We've got three different topics that we're going to cover tonight, and who knows, the format may get changed as the podcast gets solidified. Things may get more focused, or they may stay more kind of a variety show. But for tonight, we're doing things. That's how we're doing things, and so hope you'll join us. Hope you'll stick around, give us your feedback and comments, and that way we can know what you like, what you don't like, and how to grow the show and make it better. So appreciate everyone who's sticking around. And with that all said, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'd like to just introduce myself, just tell you a little bit about why I got into it, and then of course Matt, you can go ahead and tell everyone the same. But
hmm
for me, it was actually kind of funny. It all started with X Files, if you can imagine. Back when I was really young, like I would say middle school even, I would watch my dad watching the X Files, and my mom would say, "No, you can't watch that show," so I'd have to sneak it. And it was always the craziest, creepiest, most disgusting things you'd ever imagine. And especially for me as a young kid, not like watching really much anything else that's like really like that, I was like fascinated by it. And so when I got older, I think I always just kind of had this love of the supernatural and the paranormal things because of coming from that background. What about you, Matt?
Um, well, I would have to definitely say mine came from kind of the same thing, but probably at a very younger age.
Hmm.
Um, because I'd always watch like these crazy things with my family and everything, horror movies and uh even the X-Files, honestly. Like when I first
Nice.
watched that, it was something me, my dad, and my brother would watch and everything before going to bed. And I think what really solidified it was probably around the time that I was around 11 and I explored the internet, and that's where it opened a bunch of doors for stuff like that, ranging from anywhere from like UFOs to ghosts to honestly cryptids and even conspiracy theories like government stuff and non-government stuff, or even like you could say like I wouldn't say like satanic cults.
Yeah, you
I've
weren't
looked at
you
it or
performing no
anything like
rituals in your
that.
basement, were you, man?
No, 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 of course. But I
All
did,
right,
but
I
I did
understand.
study into like the different sides of magic and paganism and all that stuff. And
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because I took it as more of I really took it in that entertainment route, and was always kind of interested, but never really I was always on the surface level. I feel like you kind of took it a little bit deeper than maybe just the surface.
oh yeah, I was always fascinated with it. Like Final Fantasy opened like a wide range of like different things, and I was like, oh, okay, what's this all about? Come to
Mm.
find out it's about like D&D and other stuff like that. That's where they got their influences, like most other people, and most people got their influences from like J.R.R. Tolkien. But I think for me, it wasn't necessarily like the whole effect of like these games showing me this. It was kind of more of like the motive of it in a sense, where it's talking about like you want to explore these different things, and then by the time, pretty famously, not Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid 2 talks about like conspiracy within governments and on how people within closed doors will do certain things, and sometimes it's really not what you expect. It ends up being, uh, spoiler alert for like a probably over 15-year-old game. I think maybe 19 years now.
Yeah, I think
Turns
I've played
out
this
that
by now.
the, yeah, seriously, you can just look it up too. And it turns out like the whole mission you're on at the very end is like set up by these AI beings that are trying to
Mm,
control shit, and
damn.
it is really nutso. But like what they talked about is like I was like, it's kind of interesting. And then when you start looking at like certain things from that view, and you start reading and looking and watching and observing, you kind of see what they're talking about. with a bunch of stuff, and on how like humans will just throw anything under the bus just to prove our point, and on how we're more like we recycle garbage all the time, even though we know it's false information or we know it's a false thing. But anyways, growing up with that like led me to all these different things. So like even I could even kind of lead into something that we wanted to really talk about to begin with, the
Very
Wendigo.
nice. Yes,
Um,
that was gonna be our first. This will be our first topic for the night. Uh, and yeah, why don't you just a little bit about what you know about the Wendigo and kind of how and why you kind of have this fascination with this creature.
well, it's not necessarily a fascination, but more of a questioning of it because there is. I don't know if you've ever played the game Until Dawn. Have you?
Until Dawn. Not
It's
sure if
basically
I'm
a
familiar.
survival horror game in the veins of like
Okay.
a creature movie. You know, it it seems pretty interesting. Never really played it, but I know some of it, and I know the creature that's hunting you is a Wendigo, and I know that there's like stories of it. Like there's, I believe it's the Hopi and a few other Native American tribes where they have this legend of the Wendigo, where it's basically kind of like a story of do not eating flesh. And some people say that's not true. Some people say it is.
And is it a
It's
deer or what is it exactly?
it, part of what the folklore is that it's a deer, but it's a shapeshifter.
Hmm.
And it can try to mimic certain things. It's basically an evil spirit in a sense. And you see it mainly in like the Midwest to like Canada and a few other southern regions of the US. And there's these few stories where they talk about like the Wendigo can mimic the voices of somebody just close enough to where it throws you off edge, but not
Hmm.
perfect. But then there are stories where people actually get a look at this thing and it's like this decaying looking deer, but it has like long arms and it's deformed and other stuff like that. Now, the reason why I say this is an unexplained phenomenon to me is not necessarily just the folklore and like the whole creepy pasta aspect or even just the stories coming from people who claim to say it's real. For me, it's more of there is this disease that deers get. And it's been going on in the Midwest and even in certain other parts of the US, possibly even Canada, called chronic waste disease. And basically, the deer's alive, but it's decaying from the inside out.
That's really interesting, man. I actually want to share this. I'm going to share this on the screen here, this image, but I also like just read this quote here from this website regarding the window because what you said kind of reminds me a little bit about this quote here, and kind of keeping in mind, like you said about this disease, right? It says the Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bones. With its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets, the Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. To me, this is like that's really sounds kind of like what you were describing in a sense, giving off this stringent,
Well,
eerie odor of decay and decomposition. That's disease, right? In a sense.
yeah, yeah. To me, that not only sounds like disease, but sounds like it's decaying. That sounds like
Mm-hmm.
death. And even the stories where they see like a bunch of the skeleton and everything, like I think even on the Joe Rogan podcast and like a few other places easily accessible on YouTube, where maybe not the Joe Rogan podcast anymore. Spotify for that one, I believe. Not this is not promoted or anything. Just gotta let people know that
We're
in
not
too.
not sponsored by the Joe Rogan
Yeah, we're
podcast.
not sponsored.
Not
Anyways,
yet.
right? Call us up, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
But
We got a spot for
anyways,
you,
like
buddy.
he's had an expert and there's other like wildlife rangers and everything where they talk about it and it's pretty weird because when I first watched that, I was like, that sounds like an explanation of that. But the unexplainable part is, how are all the people who report
Oh, I
there's
I
this
heard a Skinwalker Ranch. We might have to do an episode on that at some point.
yeah, because that within itself is pretty weird too, because
Oh yeah.
even the myths of skinwalkers are pretty similar to wendigos, but they're a little bit different. But I guess like with wendigos, they're kind of like, if I'm correct, and you can even check this right now too,
Mm-hmm.
they're supposed to be like cannibals, but that might have just been like connections to the skinwalker that people were getting wrong. I'm not too sure.
Here it
But
says that the Native American versions of the creature spoke of a gigantic spirit over 15 feet tall that had once been human but had been transformed into a creature by the use of magic. Possibly something that was once human.
yeah, sounds correct. That sounds like a mythical creature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we look at the Wendigo, we can look at Medusa. She was turned into I think they're called Gorgons by Athena. So that story is just tragic, but that's for a different episode. Um, but anyway, so I mean, there's that, but it's these simple things that can be, I would say, misinterpreted or misled to where people don't necessarily understand it, and they try to fill in these blanks, to kind
Mm-hmm.
of warn people from not going near it, because maybe they've seen something with it and they're like, ah, shit. But some of these other stories are kind of like, what the fuck, man? How, how and why?
Now you're not gonna tell me you've seen a Wendigo, are you?
Huh?
You're not about to tell me you've seen a Wendigo now, are you?
Um,
Hmm.
I don't believe I've ever seen one. I
Okay.
personally
Okay.
don't believe that.
How do you feel on terms of like believe like how on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe, or what do you know what I mean, like
Like,
for the
do I
Mhm.
believe in a Wendigo?
Right, how do you feel
Or
on
the
the possibility of
possibility.
Wendigo? Exactly.
I would say if I had to put this on a scale of 1 to 10, me personally, maybe a 5 out of 5.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
you never know with mythological stories, but at the
I'm a
same
little lower.
time,
I'm
I
at like about a
don't.
4, I think, right now.
That's
Uh,
more of where I'm at. Maybe a
yeah.
4 or a 3. And to me, maybe the mythologies are just trying to explain something with the Wendigo.
It could,
But
but the
at
thing
the
is, it's
same,
also yeah. That's the thing that it's at the same time.
the possibility of it, if I were to put that in a percentage, or the probability of it, we're looking at like
But
point
then,
zero
but
zero
I always have
one.
to wonder about like how people used to say that about certain species of creatures, and then things happen. Like they're still finding new species out there. So at the same time, like
Oh,
I could I could believe it. So that's the thing. That's why I always find especially these ones about cryptids and creatures. I always find so interesting, just because there always are those possibilities out there.
well, that's true. That's true. But the way I look at it is, what would be the more logical thing?
Hey man,
And to me,
this
the
is a
more
podcast about the
logical is
unexplained, man. We gotta throw
probably
logic
the
out the
chronic
window.
waste
We
disease.
gotta throw that logic out the window with the trash, not with the baby.
Oh
Mm.
no, no. You
No,
keep
never,
possibility
never.
and probability, but you keep logic, man. You got to keep all sides with it.
No, no, no. Oh, you think so, man?
Oh yeah,
Gotta look at it
definitely.
all sides, man. Oh, okay, okay.
You always
We'll
got to
see.
look at all
We'll see who
sides.
turns out to be the skeptic in the pair. Am I gonna be the Scully, or are you gonna be the Scully in the
It'll
pair here?
probably be me, honestly, because I've looked at this stuff since I was a kid. So it's kind of it's always been there for me. Like even aliens. Aliens and conspiracy theories are my thing. That's what I love.
True. And we'll probably do a whole episode on conspiracy theories at some point, I bet.
Oh yeah, definitely. And even aliens, dude. There's so much, like so much
Oh yeah.
crazy stuff, so much funny stuff, so much like weird
Hmm.
things too, and like honestly a little bit of horrifying stuff. So
Oh, true, man. Well, it's funny because I mentioned earlier, that I was really into the X Files. The
Hmm.
there's actually an episode of the X Files with a Wendigo, and it was actually one of the first episodes I'd seen, and it really got me into that series. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's essentially there's a Wendigo stalking them in the forest, and essentially it's like, imagine someone's just standing in tall brush, and then all of a sudden they just get pulled down and they're gone, right? Like, just get eaten, and so like or killed or whatever, they get slaughtered. And so, but it's like it's you don't see it until it's already gotcha. So it was like this really kind of creepy thing where it was stalking them throughout the forest. Um, it was pretty good episode, man. I like that one.
Yeah, that's like where a lot of the stories that I've heard like actually say where it seems like it's stalking them and like it kind of eggs them on to keep coming towards it and closer
Hmm.
until it's
Exactly,
kind of
that's
like
right.
too
Yeah,
late.
yeah. Because they think that they're
Exactly.
friends. It's like trying to lure them and stuff.
Exactly. Like I remember one of the stories that I've heard was I think it was either on Coast to Coast or um on YouTube, one of the videos that you can look up real quick, like Wendigo stories, um, where the person apparently got a little lost inside of the forest with a friend. And then the two friends kind of got a little bit lost too because they split up real quick to see if they could find a river or anything and then just walk straight forward. And what ended up happening is that they heard their friend screaming. So they ran towards him and they went for a while and they couldn't find him. And then they heard it in a different direction and they were kind of worried about going forward, like into the other direction. And then they started walking that way, like nervously. And like, I think like shortly afterwards, the person basically heard their friend right behind them being like, dude, what are you doing? And he was like, what are you talking about? I heard you screaming. Oh, wait a minute. What the hell are you doing over here? How did you get over here? And the person's like, we were going to meet back over here, remember? And he's like,
My
dude,
God.
I heard you screaming over there. He was like, that was not me. And then they heard it again. And then I guess they just dipped out. They're like, hell no. So it's like, you hear a lot of those different types of stories, and a lot of them are pretty good,
It's
but
pretty interesting, man.
exactly, and that's where it comes in. It's an interesting concept and an interesting thing,
Oh, hell yeah.
explainable, but really
At the same time,
unexplainable at the same
unexplainable. That's
time.
why I think that's why it does count, because it is actually fits well, because it really is something that cannot be explained.
Hmm.
And you can't deny the iconography is just like, it's just classic. It's an iconic creature. I feel like when you think of Wendigo, it's up there with like Mothman and Jersey Devil.
Yeah. Not only that, you'll also think of like Bigfoot and other
Oh
stuff
yeah,
like
true, true,
that,
good point. Yeah.
Chupacabra, and all those other ones too. So I mean,
Hmm.
uh, now, I mean, we could even talk about like possibility of the Loch Ness monster, which me personally, I don't believe in. I don't believe it.
Leaving old was it
Old
Bessie? That's her
Nessie?
name?
Yeah,
Oh, Nessie, not
no,
Bessie. What is it? Yeah,
no,
Nessie.
no, no. Even Bigfoot, I'm very, very skeptical about, but I do see the very good probability of it.
Mm-hmm. True. Well, yeah, man. Wendigo's out. It's pretty interesting stuff, man.
Hmm.
That was a fascinating one. Now, do we want to go ahead and move on to our next topic? Do you think?
Well,
Or do you want to? Do you have a little bit more to dish on the Wendigo?
no, let's go ahead and move on. I hear it's best to not keep talking about it.
Right.
I hear that's one of the other things they
So
don't want to.
next,
They
you'll
don't
know
really
someone
want
will
to
be
mention
whispering
it.
you from out of a corner, man, and they'll be luring you into a field somewhere. It'll be all bad.
Tapping
You
on
really
your
don't want that,
door,
man.
tapping on your window.
Yeah, I'm good off that, man.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
need that in
I'm
my
all right.
life.
I'm
Yeah, I'm
okay.
fine.
I already have enough problems as it is.
But so yeah, moving from the Wendigo, the next thing we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about was the would be UFOs, and specifically Roswell, New Mexico. And so of course everybody knows Roswell. which is it's a famous case, and it involves a crashed UFO that was supposedly taken to Roswell, New Mexico, or rather taken from I think it was taken from Roswell, right, to Area 51. Is that right?
Um, I know there's one other place it went before that.
Really?
Yeah, because there's rumors of it going from Roswell to an air base and then to Area 51 or Groom
I'm not
Lake.
familiar with that. I'm not familiar with that part of the story there.
Um, yeah, shit, I'm trying to think of the guy's name now. The guy who took the picture with the supposed materials. Here, let me look it up.
While you're looking that up, I'll go over kind of essentially what the basis of what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, go ahead and go over it real quick. Sorry.
No, it's all good, man. Um, but yeah, it's a pretty interesting one. Uh, Pretty interesting story. Essentially, what happened was in 1947, there was I think people speculated at the time it was like a weather balloon, or at least that's what the government stated. But essentially, there was a wreckage found in New Mexico, and people thought it was some sort of UFO, I guess, right?
Basically, what happened was that uh, there's speculation that it's either anywhere from a like early attempts of rocketry for like going out into space to, as you were saying, a weather balloon, but at the same time, possibly something that could have been spying on the Soviets. And then when people questioned about like, oh, what about like everything with the like supposed bodies? They're like, oh, that was like test dummies, blah blah blah. And it's like, why would they have that? Like, why? Why would they have
Mm-hmm.
it?
Mm-hmm.
But there's speculation that it went to an air base. I'm trying to think of it. I haven't found it yet, so that might even be false. But yeah, yeah. Eventually, it technically went to Area 51, and the whole thing with that is there's a few different theories as to what it could have been. One theory is that it wasn't necessarily a UFO, but something that was a black project of the US that we were testing. There was a theory, of course, that it is a UFO, but of Earth design, but from a different place. So another black budget project that nobody really wanted to say. And
Mm-hmm.
then there, of course, there is the alien theory as well. But
And
the
so
wi-
and that's the kind of the public or the more official side. But what speculators happened is that alien spacecraft crashed on a ranch farm, and that it was covered up, and that they lied about it being a weather balloon.
oh yeah, 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 definitely. Like a lot of the witnesses reports were even saying that the military basically this is kind of where like one of the first real cover-ups kind of came from, I guess. If we go with that, that it actually was a down aircraft of unknown origin from outside of Earth, like a lot of people were saying who were supposedly witnesses were told that the military basically told them, just to shut your mouth. You're not going
Hmm.
to say anything.
Well, and then they also came in.
Anything.
You took away all the evidence, and then they made some bogus story up. Oh, it was a
Yeah,
weather
yeah.
balloon. Ooh.
It,
Mm.
it was it was a weather balloon. Well, what about like the bodies that were
What
found?
about
Oh,
all the
test
people that
dummies, man.
saw
Test
other,
dummies.
What about the flying, flying saucer up in the sky? You didn't think that we would be curious about that there? Mm.
Well, my whole thing is it's a little strange because to me, like, there are certain things where people waited all this time to come out with it, you know, like what was the reason for it, you
And you
know?
said there was bodies and shit or something?
Yeah, technically they found two different bodies, and one was said to be dead, and the other one I believe was either dead as well or died later on. And this is where a lot of people suspected that the alien autopsy that floated around for a long time was actually a hoax. The video was actually a hoax. Some people came out and said, "Yeah, we are the people, blah blah blah, and everything." And what that basically ended up happening is people were like really upset with about what was going on. So, and then a lot of these witnesses who apparently witnessed it actually came out and said, "This is what happened, blah blah blah." You know, we were there, we saw these things, even the picture, the material, you could crumble it up and then it would come back. And what ended up really happening is that the UFO came, or the UFO community banded together. Really, I don't want to say overblew it, you know, but they kind of gave in to the whole fact that there was this government conspiracy, and now they're really wanting everything to be a government conspiracy when it comes to Roswell. It has to be the aliens. It always has to be aliens.
Well,
Blah blah
that's the
blah.
thing I wanted to ask you about is what do you think? Do you think this is aliens, or do you think it's government using alien technology, or is it government testing, top secret planes? Oh, look, alien. Jeremy says, "Alien autopsy! Unidentified weather balloon." Oh my god, a UWB! My god, now we're getting next level here.
WB, you mean MIB?
UWB, unidentified weather balloon. So that's the next level
Interesting.
from a UFO, man.
Interesting.
We've
I
heard of
mean,
UFOs,
well,
but
if it was me,
it's fucking.
I mean that is an interesting question.
What's that? Oh, what I asked her?
Yeah, if I actually believe it, um,
You know what I think?
huh?
Well, you go first. You go first.
Okay, I
Why
will
don't you
say,
tell
no
me?
matter how crazy it sounds, I actually do believe it was a UFO. You know, I do, because I do find it strange that they would actually do all that shit and then they're allowed to take these pictures, say it's a UFO, and then they, like, 1 or 2 days later, just immediately like, nope, that's not what it fucking was. Hell no. And then tons of eyewitnesses, you know, it's not like one, two, it's like pretty much supposedly like I want to say at least 10 people were saying, like, closer to deathbed or when they got older, that, you know, it actually happened and we were told not to fucking talk about it. And even the guy who was taking the picture with Jesse, I think his name's Jesse Marcel, where you see him kind of like holding this stuff, even he like came out on his deathbed to certain people that, yeah, no, this is really what happened. You know, this is a real fucking thing. So it's kind of like, oh shit, okay, but
You know what I think, man? I have a
huh,
kind of my own theory on it. I think it could be kind of a combination of both, but I think it's more of the theory that you hear a lot where they're, and this kind of goes into what with Area 51 being a testing grounds for new technologies and things. I almost feel like it could be some sort of aircraft that
mm-hmm,
uses alien technology. For example, I did
mm-hmm,
a report back when I was in middle school on Area 51, and one of the big things that I talked about was this. I'm about to pull this up here. Was this spy plane, this rumored spy plane that was in development, um, that called the Aurora spy plane, and it's thought that there's always these rumors about it, kind of being tested on at Area 51.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, see, that's why I said, no matter what I say, like, I believe it was a UFO, but to actually think of the probability of it, that's honestly less than 1%, man.
But well,
To
I've
be
always found
honest.
and X Files did this too. I think even in one of their episodes. But the idea of like the
The more,
government
yeah,
taking UFO technology and utilizing it in U.S. aircraft. I always found that a fascinating concept.
yeah, and to me, that's what I honestly think it is. I do honestly, really 100% believe it was probably a black budget project that we were doing, and something went wrong, and these people died probably, and horrible, probably deaths, and
We don't know
we
though. I
had
mean, the
to.
thing is, with Roswell, it's
That's
particular. It's one of the first ones. You can almost say like, does Roswell give us the technology to then start working on these aircraft? Is it a chicken versus the egg situation type of thing?
Well, I think with Roswell, it was more, if we go with like Black Budget Project, it was probably more of a mistake that happened. It was probably just meant to
But it might
land in
not be a black
Roswell and
budget,
then
right?
go away
That's what I'm saying.
again.
Like, what if that was the catalyst to spark those projects because it was that first contact, right? It's that first time you have that technology as the U.S. government.
I can see that. I can see that. I mean, a lot of people do find it strange on how, like, shortly after Roswell, we started advancing in technology like rapidly quick.
Mm.
We started coming out with like fibers for electricity. We even started doing microchips, and fucking even computers started getting better. But that was connected to a few different things, like the Manhattan Project and other stuff like that.
Well, and also the
And
fact that Jimmy Carter saw UFO, so that probably had something to do with it as well.
I mean, there's actually quite a few presidents who's claimed that they've seen a
Really?
UFO.
Ah,
Yeah, Bill
oh, dang.
Clinton, Ronald
Nice.
Reagan, Jimmy Carter. I believe Nixon has said that he's seen one. Uh, I don't think George Bush or Obama. I don't think Trump did either. Uh, I mean, if you were to actually go back, I mean, there's like stories of like unidentified flying objects through certain things, but regard regarding how truthful they are, I do not know.
Right,
I take
right.
most information with a very good pinch of salt.
No, that is very
I've
strange.
been around things long enough.
Mhm. Especially when it comes to this kind of stuff, you always gotta take it with a grain of salt for sure.
Yeah,
Heavy
definitely,
dosage.
definitely. And the whole thing about it is that, like, even with Roswell, it's very fascinating. It's very interesting. A lot of people want to connect it to like the government or like certain other things. Like, to me, I could see it more probably being a black budget project of the US. It's 1947. The war for us ended in 1945, a little bit sooner for fighting the Germans, and we took in through Operation or Project Paperclip, where we took in some of
Mm.
those Nazi scientists and started working on some of that stuff that they were working on.
Mhm.
So I mean, there's that possibility where that happened, where they were working on other stuff and something happened. Boom, goes down. They're like, "What the hell is this?" Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Never seen it in my life. UFO, bro. So
Nah.
maybe misidentification, secrecy, blah blah blah. But it's still one of those unexplainable phenomenons, because i- too many people are very much on the extreme where either you believe it's the aliens or you don't believe that it happened at all. And if you can't believe it's aliens, then you think it's a government project.
Now it sounds like there was some sort of Roswell alien report that was released. Are you
Um,
familiar with this? There was apparently in 1997 there was a U.S. Air Force official released a 231-page report dismissing long-standing claims of an alien spacecraft crash.
yeah, yeah.
Huh.
I
Ah.
mean,
Oh,
there's
this is
tons
good.
of
Oh, no,
things.
this is good, dude. This is good. Let me read
Okay,
this, man.
what's it saying?
This
What's
is
it saying?
hilarious. This kind of goes into the what you were telling, because I was curious. You said, the bodies. I was like, what do you mean there's bodies, right? And so,
Hmm.
like, this kind of talks a little bit about the bodies here. Let me share this page here. And so here's the image, right, of the body. It says, this photo from the Air Force's The Roswell Report, released Tuesday, June 24th, 1997, which discusses the UFO incident in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. On balloon flights, test dummies were used and placed in insulation bags to protect temperature-sensitive equipment. These bags may have been described by at least one witness as body bags used to recover alien victims from the crash of a flying saucer.
Yeah, see,
That's
but
kind of BS, too.
yeah, see, that's why everybody's like, okay, first you're saying it's a weather balloon.
Now you're saying
Now you're saying there's a dummy with the weather balloon. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Who puts a
Blimps? We already
dummy in a
know
weather
blimps are
balloon, dude?
real.
Test dummies. What are you even going on about test dummies?
So I mean that's what like eggs on this myth, you know. And there's even some people who say that, you know, like UFOs are like a whole
We got
fucking
a question in the
BS.
chat. Looks like we got a question in the chat here.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Law asks, can I ask a serious question? Why aren't there flying saucer aircraft? I don't mean spaceships. I mean acknowledged aircrafts that are sort of saucer shaped, but bad aerodynamics? That's a great question. That is a really interesting question. I suppose it would be kind of atypical for to be aerodynamic. It wouldn't necessarily be the most aerodynamic design. What do you think of that?
Saucer shape, I don't think it would be good. I mean, when we look at like I don't know physicists, but when you look at everything that's meant to actually go forward, it has this like cone aspect to it. You know, like the best example is a hawk. You know, they can fly through the sky, but when they actually go down to strike at prey, they look like a bullet going through the sky. You know, and even bullets, they're
True.
shaped with a cone.
And
So
that's kind
it's
of like
kind
that
of more of
aerodynamic, kind of like what he's saying there.
exactly. So I think, and the whole theory with UFOs is that they have a
Check
different
this out. Oh,
propulsion
this is
system.
interesting.
It's a weird thing where they can be
I got
either
one for you, Jeremy.
gravitational. Okay.
Apparently, there actually was designed a real life aircraft, kind of in that shape here. It says the U.S. Air Force's 1950s supersonic flying saucer declassified. Here's the design you can see for it. Definitely a kind of interesting shape. I'm imagining the cutout of the saucer, that would probably be the back, but I could be wrong. Let's go and take a look here. It says, tighten on the strap on your tinfoil hat. Recently declassified documents show that the U.S. Air Force was working on, perhaps had already built, a supersonic flying saucer in 1956. The aircraft, which once had the codename Project 1794, was developed by the USAF, United States Air Force, and Avro Canada in the 1950s. One declassified memo, which seems to be the conclusion of initial research and prototyping, says that Project 1794 is a flying saucer capable of Mach 3 and Mach 4, a surface ceiling of over 100,000 feet and a range of around 1,000 nautical miles. Well, that's pretty interesting. If they had already built something that and could have been testing, that's really interesting, man.
I could
Who
see
knows?
it.
Says it would.
I mean, I could
supersonic
see it.
flyer would propel itself by rotating an outer disk at very high speed, taking effect of the Conada effect. Maneuvering would be accomplished by using small shutters on the edge of the disk, similar to ailerons on a winged aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Power would be provided by jet turbines. According to the cutaway diagrams, the entire thing would be even capable of vertical takeoff and landing as a VTOL aircraft. Would be pretty fascinating, man. So I guess it's not entirely impossible.
Yeah, no. Even other people have tried doing it too.
Yeah,
I think the reason why they stopped doing it is because it wasn't necessarily feasible. You know,
either that or it's just not.
I don't.
It's not necessary. Like, I mean, you save material by doing it like a more traditional shape, I suppose.
Well, yeah, probably. I mean, just the way it
Look, you're
sounds, like
right.
it would take a lot of power.
Right here, dude. Even says just not functional. If flying saucers were somehow faster, more efficient, or capable of lifting heavier loads, we'd almost certainly see them in a commercial setting. Sadly, while some UFO sightings may have indeed been Project 1794, it's unlikely that they were anything more than experiments carried out by humans, not aliens. Very interesting. That could
Yeah,
be another theory, for some of those early sightings.
I can see it. I
Yeah,
definitely see that. Even probably to this day, that's probably what it is.
I could really see
Them
that. It's
testing
pretty
certain things
interesting,
out.
dude.
I mean, even with if you were to believe like Bob Lazar, um, he claims it is a UFO in a sense, and it was taken to Roswell, or not taken to Roswell. It was taken from Roswell to um, a different base, and then there. I think it's Fort Worth, honestly. And when he came out, basically, he even said on the Joe Rogan podcast, and even in some interviews, that they had like 6 or 7 UFOs over at Area 51. And this is kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but the whole thing about it is that from that, the claim is that the reason why Roswell is so important is because that's where a lot of the secrecy began, and a lot
Mm.
of the different stuff that Truman started led to a bunch of different things, like Majestic 12. There's the Blue Book, Project Blue Book. There's like all these different things, even with conspiracies of like Eisenhower meeting up with the gray aliens in the 1950s and stuff like that. And so I think that's part of the reason why like Roswell is one of those really important conspiracy theories or like unexplainable things, because even to this day, like nobody is really satisfied. Like not everyone is satisfied with the official story.
And then that also leading into Area 51. I mean, Area 51 is such an iconic thing in pop culture and in media, and I mean everybody knows about it. And even going if you go like you ever get the chance to go to Ros, to where I think it's Groom Lake, Nevada. I think is where it's at.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I think that's what it's really called and everything. But
yeah,
you're
but
not really allowed to go there.
the thing is, they have a whole culture there. They have a whole the surrounding town and area. You
Oh
go there,
yeah,
and it's all
yeah.
about the culture. You can go on bike tours that go right up along the fences. There's diners and there's museums and everything like that, and it's just become this cultural juggernaut in a sense that just captures people's imagination. I
Well, I
mean,
mean, look at
recently there was the remember the Area 51.
yeah, Storm Area 51. What year was
Yeah.
that? 2019. There we go. And I
Naruto
don't
run
even know
into
if
Area
people
51.
I don't even know if people really did that. You know,
Some people showed up. No one actually tried
when
to
I heard
storm it,
about
but
it, I laughed so hard. I was like, no way.
I think
No
people
way
showed up on
people
the
are
outside.
gonna do this.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it just would be a terrible idea. They have signs that say you can use deadly force authorized. There they can. Like God, don't test them. Don't make them use that on you.
I remember all the memes and everything being like, everybody should come. They can't kill us all. And like, so somebody was like, and who was like, I was in the military. They could fucking kill you all. I was like, oh shit.
Oh yeah, I just imagine like some sort of GIF of like from a movie of like him mowing down all the enemies or something. It's like, oh God,
Oh shit.
why? Why did we do this?
Oh man,
Terrible
that
idea.
is so funny though. That is so funny. But I mean,
If you Naruto run, you're faster, so it is guaranteed. That is true.
come on, dude. Don't be spreading false information here, bro. We might
Right,
get
we
us
only tell
taken
the
down
truth
off
on this
the.
podcast. We,
We
we
might
don't we
get
don't
taken
tell
out.
lies, man.
Yeah, come on, bro. Come on. We might get taken down by YouTube, all right? Or they might have to put a thing on our shit. I mean, they're probably already going to put that, with the whole
Flag
Area
it.
51
Yeah.
and all that. But I mean, the whole thing with UFOs and like, because I mean, it goes even further than like just Area 51. Like, there's stories of like even Washington D.C. having UFO sightings with, and this is kind of a good thing to go into with like even something recently that can be explained. I think it was earlier in the week that happened nearby you as well. Because even my cousin
Mhm.
talked about this on Facebook, yeah, where there was these series of flights that people were seeing, and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" And a lot of people were like, "Dude, it's probably a UFO," and some people were like, "Oh yeah, most likely." And it was something as simple as this: wasn't it Elon Musk's satellites?
Yeah, it turned out it was the new, I think it's Starlink is what it's called, but they're these new low orbit satellites that they're launching to kind of provide a new high speed internet to people across the world. And so they send them up in batches of 40 to 60 at a time. And the thing is, they're extremely low. They fly lower than any other satellite we have up in the sky. And that's how they're able to get such high speed internet and things like that. So like it's that's why they're so visible. And so you can see here, there's they look like just a string of lights, a row of lights just kind of flying in the sky. I can almost imagine it look like an armada of aliens arriving to take over the planet.
Oh, I bet. I bet, man. Like a lot of people would probably see that and be like, "What the hell is going on? Come on!" Like, what the hell? I mean, to be honest, I've seen some crazy things in the Bay Area myself. And some of it is very explainable. A lot of these things are. It's something just as simple as the satellite, or even just a plane, or just something. Like I remember this one time, me and Alicia were driving home from actually here. We were driving home from visiting Ray and Amanda when they still lived out in this area before we moved in together, and they left to go to Arkansas. But the the funniest thing is, me and her were driving. It was late at night, and we're over by where we used to live, over in Oakley. There is a base, Travis Air Force Base, and they do a lot of late night test flights and everything, just to make sure that people are trained and everything. They know how to fly during the night. And what ended up happening is that me and Alicia were driving. We're like, and I see this line. I'm like, hey, keep an eye on that light. And she's like, okay. So we're just driving, and she's like, that light's getting bigger. I was like, see, that's what I was thinking. Like, what the hell is going on? So we're just driving and driving, and I make a turn, and it's kind of keeping up with us. And I'm like, okay, this is fucking freaky. This is fucking creepy as hell. And we're going and going. Within like 2 minutes, we noticed that it's starting to get really fucking close. I'm like, what the fuck? So I find a spot to where we can pull over, and we pull over, and I'm just sitting there staring at him like, okay, what the, excuse the French, but what the fuck is this? Like, what the hell is going on? And we're sitting there watching it, and then next thing you know, we start hearing the boom of the plane. And then we see it. And now we start seeing the flashes and everything. And that's just on how simple it is. It went from like, what the shit, to, oh, were they following and fucking with us?
So what was it, Dean?
It was one of the military planes, honestly. We saw the lights, and it started flickering. Yeah, yeah. And that's why I was like, what the fuck? They must be able to do like late night flights or whatever. Like, that was fucking weird. Or
and then that's when they abducted you, right?
Hey, you never know. I just didn't have missing time.
Did you have a loss of time? Yeah, I was gonna say.
No loss of time or anything, as far as I know.
I mean, we had a loss of time when this episode started. I think we started a little like 15 minutes late. I think we got abducted, man.
Hey, you never know, man.
Abducted earlier, Dean.
You never know.
Oh, man.
If it's aliens, they may be anywhere from thousands, maybe even hundreds, to billions of years ahead of us. So
if anything,
we could have been abducted and not even known.
And we should be grateful, if anything.
Possibly. That's that's what I'm saying.
You can only be here to help, right? I mean, why else would they come millions of light years but to help, right? I mean, that's just logic. That's common sense right there.
Unless they're us, or I should say like us. Not us, but like us. And they like to conquer. That would be that wouldn't be so good. That would not be so good. But I even have this other story where, and it's happened a few times back when I lived over at my mom's house still, where I would be outside just hanging out, either smoking a little bit of weed or even just smoking a cigarette real quick. And I'd be looking at the sky because I love science. I love astronomy, and looking at the stars and everything. So I was sitting there and I see a light, just thinking it's a star. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Maybe a planet because it's just a solid light. And then the next thing you know, I'm staring at it and it starts getting dimmer, 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 and it's gone. And it didn't move. It didn't go through the sky. It was not a falling star, meteorite, comet, whatever. It just got dimmed and disappeared as if it was like a light.
That's weird.
It was the weirdest thing. Like, to me, this is probably the most unexplainable thing I've ever seen, because I don't think it was a supernova. I don't think it was us being too far away from it, because if it was a star, that wouldn't happen. And if it was a supernova, that was the smallest supernova of probably all time. But I've never heard of that, to where a supernova is so small it still looks like a star.
Also, does it? I don't know enough about that process, but does it just fade away like that? I mean, I would imagine it's a gradual, like something that would happen.
Fade away. Right? That's the whole thing about it. And to me, that is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And it hasn't happened to me just once, not twice, but at least 4 times.
Oh shit!
With other people.
You're marked, man. You're marked. Feel the back of your neck.
You never know.
Right now?
I
think you got the implant.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe on my back or somewhere where I can't reach.
No, but really, that's interesting, man. That really is interesting.
It really is, and I still question about it to this day. Like, I've had it to happen to someone who's a complete skeptic of like UFOs and stuff, and he's like, "Okay, there has to be a logical explanation." And I'm like, "If you know it, let me know, dude. I do not know what it is." And
I feel like
it's a little weird that I told you about it and then you saw it. And he's like, "That is the creepiest part." And I'm like, exactly.
Yeah, it is always weird. Like, I feel like maybe the one, I feel like I have a story where, like, I feel like one time I saw something in the sky didn't move, it looked like it was moving kind of weird, that kind of thing. And so I don't know. It's really interesting, man.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it could just be something very logical of something that happens. It could be something unexplainable. It could be aliens. It
could be some sort of like shared conscious illusion or something. Who knows, really.
I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one, because for it to happen to one person, and
that's a thing though. That's
another person.
Think about like the Berenstain Bears, or like the Mandela effect, essentially.
Well, and not only that, but there is like a condition that is called like shared delusion or something like that.
Totally,
There's an actual.
I know that exactly. Yeah.
But I mean,
not saying
it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't anything like that. Like, I talked to a friend who is completely skeptical of the entire idea, somebody who's open to it, and somebody who's like, maybe, I don't, like, doesn't really care about it, But the interesting thing that I always find is that almost everyone, or I would say maybe not everyone, of course, but maybe 7 out of 10 people have a story of their own with something that's unexplainable that they've seen in the sky, and they question it.
No, that's pretty crazy, man. Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to do like another whole episode just on aliens and UFOs and just kind of dive into everything, because there's just so much out there. I mean, remember we went to an Alien Con a couple years back?
Oh yeah, dude. I think, yeah. I mean, to be honest, just even being around there, I kind of felt like a real nerd. I felt like a true geek and nerd. I was like, holy shit. This is my jam right here.
Yeah, dude,
and
really.
like to be honest, I still watch Ancient Aliens here and there. Their concepts
Nice.
are pretty interesting.
Oh yeah.
They're
Oh yeah.
pretty and they're really interesting.
Yeah,
I
and they're
will
really
say
well
that they
done too.
have
The
inspired some of my
presentation is
work,
good, man. Mm-hmm. No, I get it, man. Yeah. Totally.
but yeah, definitely. We have to do a future episode on aliens and other stuff like that.
Definitely. Yeah. Did you do you have any other things for Area 51 or Roswell that we kind of wanted to cover, or aliens in that nature?
Uh,
Or shall we move on to
well,
our last topic here?
we, yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. Because otherwise I can spend a whole another hour about this stuff.
Right? Yeah, really. So the last thing we wanted to go over on our pilot episode here of the Wicked Files is kind of an interesting one. This one's kind of a fun one. Not sure how many people are aware of these fun things here, but there's a weird connection between Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, and President John F. Kennedy. And so I like to go first. I want to read off some of just the connections and weird shared things, and then I just want to go into kind of a free form conversation with you, Matt, about kind of speculation on what could possibly be going on here. What could cause something like this? Because
Yeah,
this
yeah.
was
I
one that's
mean,
always fascinated me from a young age.
yeah, and it sounds like you know a lot more about it than I do. So go ahead, man.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I'll just like I said, I want to list off some of the interesting stuff here. But again, Abraham Lincoln, and actually before I do that, just to get a really interesting sense of kind of the separation between these two men, I really kind of be interesting to see when was the birth and death of each of these guys. So, Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 and died in 1865, and John F. Kennedy was born in 1925 and died in 1968. So about 100 years apart, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they died about 100 years apart from each other. Quite interesting. Interestingly enough, very close to it. So, very far apart, obviously. Couldn't have known each other in any way. So similarities between Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy. Both men were elected to Congress in 46, Lincoln in 1846, Kennedy in 1946. Both men were elected to the presidency in 60, Lincoln in 1860, Kennedy in 1960. Both men were concerned with civil rights. Both men married in their 30s to women in their 20s. Both men lost a son while living in the White House. Both presidents had 4 children. The doctors for Lincoln and Kennedy had the same name, Charles Taft. Lincoln's private secretary was called John. Kennedy's private secretary was called Lincoln. Both men were shot on a Friday. Both men were shot in the head, and both men were shot in the presence of their wives. Lincoln was sitting in box number 7 of Ford's Theater when he was killed, and Kennedy was riding in car number 7 in the cavalcade. Both men were assassinated by Southerners. The law enforcement officer who detained John Wilkes Booth was called Lafayette Baker, as was the man who detained Lee Harvey Oswald, was Marion L. Baker. Both their presidential successors were named Johnson, Andrew Johnson and Lyndon B. Johnson. Both men were succeeded by Southerners. Both successors were born in 08, Andrew Johnson in 1808 and Lyndon Johnson in 1908. Both assassins are known by 3 names. Both assassins have 15 letters in their names. And the last 3 are I find always interesting here. The Booth ran from the theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theater. Both assassins were themselves assassinated before their trials. And John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald were both originally thought to be lone gunmen, were later discovered that they were part of a conspiracy. And so, long list there, but I always found just the weird connections there to be oddly fascinating, man. And I have my own theories about it, but I want to hear your initial impressions on it.
Okay. Initial impressions. The conspiracy theorist in me is just going like, okay, all right, uh huh, yeah, definitely, definitely a conspiracy, man. But the rational part of me is finding very, very odd connections. You know, like
Mhm.
Some of it is very odd. Like even the whole fact of like the 40s and like the way that they both were, and not only that, the way that both of them died in certain ways and under circumstantial like not conspiratorial, which it turns out, yes, both of them were, but at the same time, it seems highly suspicious at the least, you know.
What
So,
makes me what makes me because when I first think of hear those things, I don't necessarily think of conspiracy. I think of
mhm.
like reincarnation or synchronicity or something of that nature, where things are
And
lining
see
up, or what is
that's
it?
more of my logical side going like,
Right.
like that's a lot of synchronistic, a lot of like
Uh-huh.
wow, like history repeating itself in a sense, you know.
Yeah, it's very
There's a lot
bizarre,
of,
indeed.
and that is somewhat of a theory that history does tend to repeat itself because people don't learn from the past, you know, and that could very well have been what happened due to chaos theory in a sense. But at the same time, reincarnation, yeah, that's a crazy thought about it because even part of
Right.
me was sitting there thinking of it like, wow, I didn't know he married like a 20-year-old.
I didn't really either.
Okay. Now here's my question. Here's my question. Uh, was was Lincoln either one connected to darker people in a sense, like JFK's family was supposedly connected to the mob, and two, was Lincoln hiding not necessarily a dark past, but a secret of some sorts of, let's say, infidelity.
What do you say to that, man?
Well, there's always been the rumors of JFK having like affairs and other stuff like that, you know. There's even the whole theory of him and Marilyn Monroe having an affair. How
Mm-hmm.
true they are, I don't know. I wasn't alive back then. I'm not gonna. It's interesting to speculate, you know, it really is. But at the same time, if we're gonna focus more on the whole JFK, I mean, the JFK and Lincoln aspect, I mean, that would be a very part to think about, you know,
Yeah, and really.
because the whole thing with with that connection is that that could lead more towards like the whole thought of reincarnation is that married a 20 something year old, you know, and when he was in his 30s, wanted to get into some form of politics, wanted to help with some form of civil rights,
Right.
wanted to do a
Yeah.
few other things, and that's kind of what makes it more of like, huh,
And
you
I always
know,
thought it was so funny
maybe.
that one of my favorite ones is that Lincoln's secretary is named Kennedy and advised him not to go to the theater that day. And Kennedy's secretary, who was named Lincoln, advised him not to go to Dallas the day. So they both had secretaries named the opposite of their, the other person, and that secretary warned them not to go to the place where they died.
And see, that right there within itself is the weirdest part too.
Yeah.
That right there, and not only that, the whole Johnson, and then the whole theater and theater. You know,
Yeah, yeah. It's so bizarre, dude. Like it's almost too bizarre to be coincidence.
exactly, and that's the reason why part of the conspiracy theorists with him is like, okay, the red flags are going off, man. They're going off. Come on, you know. So
Kind of hard to ignore him,
and
right?
yeah, right. But and this kind of leads into something I do want to talk about a little bit later is like kind of have you ever heard of the Skull and Bones Society?
I don't think so.
Okay. What it is that it's like this secret society in a sense. And it said that George Bush and John Kerry are both members of it, which is why when
Mm,
they were both going to be president and somebody asked them during one of the debates, like, don't you find that a little bit strange? And they're like, well, you know, we're here to be president because we want to be, not because of anything to do with that, blah, blah, blah. And that could be true. But at the same time, they're said to be like one of the oldest one, said to have had existed since like the 1800s, early 1800s. Same thing with like the Freemasons, Illuminati, and all that stuff, you know.
Totally, yeah.
So, and it's kind of weird, and that's the whole thing. They love ritualistic, they love like synchronicity, but they love like doing stuff like that. Supposedly, these are again conspiracy theories. These are not
Hmm.
things that are necessarily 100% proven, but
That's interesting, man. I kind of see where you're getting with it, almost in a sense, like maybe he could have been part of one of these groups here.
in a sense, like an unwitting sacrifice in a sense, and that's kind of the thing of like even with reincarnation, because like or even just the whole thought of like a conspiracy, because there like you were saying, one of the end things is that they're both part of a conspiracy of some sort. One of the conspiracies with JFK can lead anywhere from UFOs, like
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about earlier, all the way up to shadow governments. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. With Lincoln, it was more of the fact that he wanted to give, supposedly, I believe this is honestly true, he wanted to give people of color, POCs, and he wanted to give everybody more rights in a sense. And the Southerners and the Northerners of, like, let's say, higher classmanship did not want to do that. So he was offed off because of that. And John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald are just pawns within the game that they can be used, manipulated, and taken over to be able to do something that they thought would be good, but it's not. And we will never know the truth because they were both killed beforehand.
Hmm.
I guess there's a famous line saying that Lee Harvey Oswald said he didn't work alone. There's even a theory that Jack Ruby was even hired by the CIA to take care of Lee Harvey Oswald, that he was a double agent for like the Russians, and the Russians deny it. And like there's all these
Mm-hmm.
different like theories of what could have happened and what did happen. I mean, there's even the thought of like what you talked about with the whole multiple shooter thing.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. There may have been other shooters within the theater as well for Lincoln.
Well, and
But
they did know it was part of a conspiracy as it is already. So I mean that's quite possible.
exactly, because like they talk about what's called the magic bullet for JFK. You never know. If John Wilkes Booth didn't complete his job, there could have been other shooters just in case.
Yeah, man, it's
So
it's it's really crazy, dude.
yeah,
So that gets
there's
to, that
like
gets to the alternative theory of if it's not like say we originally had said like reincarnation, right? Like what if it's he's reliving these same events in a new life or something of that nature? But what if it's more like you were saying, like conspiracy, where it's this conspiracy over generations of this cult that maybe they're manipulating things.
I mean, if so, that just proves more and more that certain games that I was playing as a kid is just absolutely correct. Like Final Fantasy Tactics, where it talked about like people of high places and people of power will always try to keep power and try to do anything within their power to do that, and they will conspire together to do so, regardless if it's good or not, because that's what they want. So it's like, damn, damn. And sometimes everyone's a pawn. The king, the queen, the people trying to fight for everybody's rights, they're all pawns in the great scheme of things. And
Doomed to repeat themselves.
exactly, until things get better or things go to shit. I mean, which in a sense, maybe that's why some philosophers say that hell is Earth, because if reincarnation is true and and you're doomed to repeat the same mistakes in different lifetimes, that's kind of a hell right there. No.
Oh yeah,
Um,
man, that's a living hell right there.
oh yeah, seriously. But I mean, maybe you're just supposed to overcome these things. Maybe that's the whole
Hmm.
point of it. Once when you find out what you're doing and overcome it, you'll be better off. But I mean, reincarnation within itself. I mean, that's
Yeah,
fucking.
you had some things you wanted to kind of bring up about reincarnation, didn't you?
Well, there's a few different things, like on how it is actually somewhat of a believed thing. Well, not somewhat. Some religions actually believe it. Hinduism, Buddhism, and a few other Eastern cultures believe that that is true. And I believe there may be some Indian tribes and um, like American tribes, South and North American, and I believe a few African tribes as well that believe in reincarnation. Um, but each one has their own theory of it in a sense. Is that
Kind
some of
of.
them believe? Go on.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, man. It kind of almost reminds me of I remember reading about the story of the Dalai Lama, and
Hmm.
how there was one in particular where like they found this young boy and he had all these knowledge, all these things that he shouldn't have had as this young child, and they it was just almost like this thing where like this is the reincarnation of the he said he was the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, and like I said, had all this weird knowledge, and so it's kind of a really interesting story. When I read about it, like, oh man, this is wild stuff here.
Yeah, right. Like that's pretty crazy. There's even this story of I don't remember exactly what year it was, but there was this kid who remembers having vivid dreams and vivid memories of being in a plane, like a World War II style plane, and fighting off the Japanese and actually like dying and everything. And
Oh, really?
he would be able to look at pictures and be like, yeah, that's my that's my friends and everything, blah blah blah. And they'd be like, what the fuck? Like what the hell? And like his dad would do some research, found out who the person was, who he claimed to be, and then like, okay, so pick out who was you, and he's like, that's me, right there, and it was actually the guy, and their parents were a little freaked out, so they found out some of the people still lived and took him to go visit the people, and he would talk to them, and some of the memories that those people remembered were there, like, whoa, that's fucking weird. So a lot of people believe that the kid was reincarnated from that guy who died in World War II.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, and I mean,
That kind of stuff's
again,
pretty
if it's
wild too, because you.
believable,
Well, that's the thing. Like
uh,
that. I mean, how else can you explain it? I mean, sure you chalk up to good imagination, but at the same time,
the
you know,
specifics and all that synchronicity with it and all that, that's what makes it unexplainable and questionable. And to me, that's what I
exactly.
love about
That's why it
certain
fits
things
in with
like
all
that.
these kind of things that we've been talking about tonight.
Exactly. And that's kind of the whole thing with all these different unexplainable things, from the Wendigo to UFOs to even um
JFK and
not even
Lincoln
just JFK, reincarnation, synchronicities,
reincarnation. Yeah.
there's all these like things that you can actually trace back to you to mythological times in a sense, like there are stories of even like painters from the medieval times or even like ancient periods where, and this is like the whole ancient alien thing too, with like them depicting UFOs and their art and all that kind of stuff, or uh, little things like that, cave paintings depicting stars flying through the sky in weird ways and all that. But even to the Wendigo, with having the mythological stories from the Indian tribes and all the different stories that people have from over the time, and then even reincarnation or even synchronicity and everything. So, I mean, going back to the JFK thing in Lincoln, that's the weird part, is all that synchronicity of how they both lived their lives and what happened with them and how they died and the circumstances, to all that weird stuff with both the killers having these certain things, and didn't you say that both the killers were around the same age too when they killed
I
them?
think so. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's correct.
So I mean, that right there really leads into some like really weird questions that I have with that.
Yeah, really. Yeah, that is it is fascinating stuff, man. And I was wondering, do you think we have time for one more bonus segment? I had one more
Yeah.
topic I actually wanted to go to bring up, and I know
Oh
it's one that
yeah.
you're
Yeah.
familiar with, so we should be able to go over this one here. It's something called the Philadelphia experiment, and this is a fascinating one. one I learned about a while back. I think I was watching the History Channel, possibly, or something of that nature. But essentially, it's about an old warship. You can see it there on the screen. But the story goes that the Philadelphia Naval Yard harbors a hidden history beyond its role as a docking point for military vessels. It might have just been the site of one of the strangest scientific experiments of all time. The infamous Philadelphia experiment defied the laws of physics as we understand them, and according to some, cost several servicemen their lives. It's kind of in question if it ever really happened or if it's a myth or a legend. But essentially, the story goes that in 1943, the Germans had the advantages on the high seas. Their fleets of U-boats wreaked havoc upon Allied military and merchant vessels in the Atlantic. The United States decided to pull out all the stops with a device that could electronically cloak vessels from being picked up on radar. In Philadelphia, a small destroyer known as the USS Eldridge would test this theory. In June, the Eldridge was fitted with tons of strange equipment. Generators and coils were mounted throughout the ship in order to produce encompassing electromagnetic fields. When the devices ran in unison, this setup would theoretically bend the light and sound waves around the ship, making it virtually invisible. At 9 a.m. on July 22nd, 1943, this theory was tested for the first time. When the generators were turned on, a green fog surrounded the ship. In the blink of an eye, the ship itself entirely vanished. And 15 minutes later, the generators were turned off and the Eldridge reappeared. So essentially, the theory is that it disappeared, transported to a different location, and then came back. And so there was this fog, this green light, and the crew was disoriented and confused, kind of shocked, and apparently violently ill. When the ship was boarded, the entire crew was ill. Some had disappeared, and 5 were supposedly fused into the walls of the ship. Some had been emotionally and mentally stripped to the point of insanity. No one knows how the physical teleportation of the USS Eldridge could have happened. The government quickly covered up the results of the experiment, although over the many years, witnesses have verified the strange tale as authenticated fact. So, however, some still claim that it's no more than sci-fi fantasy. So it's kind of this interesting thing where this military experiment, potentially they figure out teleportation on accident and then cover it up to try and make the public not aware of it.
Huh. Okay. So let me ask you this. What's your thoughts?
This is one of my more believable ones. Actually, because I feel like there is a lot of people who've come out and people who were there, people who were witnessed
So you
it.
think it's kind of more of the lines of, like, let's say, not necessarily UFOs, but it's along the lines of the Roswell.
Right, exactly. Some more weird government testing of weird technologies that they just don't think the public is ready to understand yet.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is my skeptical side. This is um well, and this is my question for it. What were H.P. Lovecraft's creatures called? Not Lovecraftian, but what were they actually called in, like, the
Horrors?
Eldritch Horrors? What's this
Maybe.
boat called?
The book?
No, the boat.
Oh, the boat. What did I call it? The
USS Eldritch, right? So I'm looking at some things for it right now. Like, this is real time. I'm looking at, like, I just put in USS Eldridge, and it shows that it's a real one named after John Eldridge Jr., who was basically part of World War II in the Solomon Islands. So that's where he became famous for, I guess. So part of me is very, very skeptical of the story,
Fair enough, yeah.
But I do see that. Like, there's rumors of, and this could be a whole different episode as well, with, like, black budgets and how far that does extend to, like, there's stories of back in World War II, not the Russians, sorry, the Germans were creating the Glocke or something like that, like the secret project that they had.
What's that? What's it called?
It, it's I think it's called De Glock. It's basic, like I guess it's found to be a hoax, but a lot of
Mm,
people believed it. I don't know if it is a hoax. It's a fascinating story, but
really?
what it was that the Germans were trying to figure out on how to manipulate space in a sense, and what it was that they wanted to figure out a way to basically find faster ways to get to places. And the whole theory, part of the theory, is that they already found this miracle weapon that was going to help them win World War II. And this is kind of what people believed Foo Fighters were as well. But what it was that it was this machine that they manipulated to where it could teleport or travel somewhere instantaneously or within a short distance of time. But it kind of looks like a teleportation. So what ended up happening is that the theory is that it ended up there was this bell that they were working on, and
Oh, I've heard of this.
they it turned it on and it didn't work, or it like teleported but they could never find it. And what ended up happening is that
Ah,
it fell like supposedly somewhere else on Earth, and one of the places that it fell was either somewhere in Europe, and they found it and just said hell no, because it was kind of that same thing with the Project Philadelphia, or the Philadelphia experiment,
mm-hmm.
where it was like just some like fucked up shit happening basically. And one of the other theories is that it landed here in the US,
Really?
but in the future.
Oh, shit. Our future?
Like basically some people, I think it was Michigan or something like that. Uh, I don't remember exactly, but one of the theories is that there was this UFO that like crashed in Michigan or something like that, and the military like basically were on top of that shit hell quick and got it out of there within like 12 hours or something like that after having everything brought in. But like people at the time who wanted to go check it out, like they had to go inside of the forest and it was really hard to see and everything. But like some of the witnesses claimed that they couldn't even get close. But from what they saw, it looked like a bell shaped item.
That's crazy, man. I always kind of find this one fascinating just because of the era, the history behind, that kind of thing, but also just like the idea of this weird kind of almost supernaturalistic technology, like that's like designed to do like really weird things. Like it's just a weird idea that I've always been kind
Yeah.
of interested in.
Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't Michigan. It was actually Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. That's where it was. And it was reported by 6 other states, like Canada. Well, not states, but I guess Canada saw it. Michigan and Detroit. Detroit, Miss. A few different places saw it. Sorry.
Damn, dude,
I
that's
just looked it up
crazy.
real quick. But
Hmm.
so I don't know about any of that. I'm not like fully researched into it. I found these stories very
Personally, if
interesting.
yeah, if I have to say, just based on listening to the stories, everything's that I've not researched, but things that I kind of believe, I suppose you could say. I don't know if this was a something that could actually do what it was supposed to do, but I do really feel like they probably did work on it, at
Oh,
some
I
point.
honestly think that they did work on something like that. I mean, if you really want to look at it, they still are working on invisibility techniques. The Japanese are, the Chinese, the Americans are. I mean,
Well, I
that's the
mean,
whole
yeah, I
point of
mean that
camouflage
goes back into
clothing.
right, the Philadelphia experiment, exactly.
I mean, that could be where we learn to do that. Like, oh, that gives us a better chance. Blah blah blah. But how wacky that whole situation happened, and if that's
Right.
true, I personally do not know. Do I believe
Right.
it? there could be a strong possibility that it could have happened, but
Right. But one, I just don't know. Just don't know.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's interesting. The Philadelphia experiment. Actually, there is a movie that you can watch about it. There, I'll put the link in the chat here so people can check that out if they want. It's on DVD. You can also rent it on Amazon. But that it's got like 4.5 stars, so it's apparently pretty good. I'm not sure who's in it. Michael Pare and Nancy Allen. One of the best science fiction films of the '80s, apparently.
Interesting. Interesting.
Right?
I mean,
Isn't
I
isn't
could
that
see it.
wild?
It's a pretty interesting like story, you know. It kind of reminds me of Event Horizon.
I could see it.
Have you
Yeah, I could definitely see it,
have you
man.
ever seen that movie?
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Isn't that the? It's like it's like disaster kind of movie, right? Or am I mistaken?
No, no, no. This one, it's basically a space horror movie where they go
Maybe I haven't
to
seen it.
this spaceship where it's called Event Horizon or
Oh,
something like that.
yeah, I don't think
It
I
might
have
even be a
seen
different
that.
fucking name. But what ends up happening is that apparently the ship disappeared for like 8 years and then
Oh
reappeared next to
damn.
Neptune.
Oh shit.
And
Really?
like it's basically quote
Did I
unquote
see that?
haunted or it came alive and it's been like
I
it
don't think
went
I
to
have.
like this evil fucked out dimension and everything,
Oh
and
damn.
like the crew members are all gone and dead and everything, but when they looked at the like the logs and all that, as soon as they were like there, everything like went to shit, dude. And like the ship's like really playing tricks on them, all the crew members, and it's killing them off basically. And I was like, that is fucking weird. And then I hear like later on, I learned about the Philadelphia experiment, and I was like, okay, that kind of sounds like this. So maybe that's where the
Uh,
inspiration for that came from.
it's
But
like
to
the
me, this
Philadelphia
sounds like
experiment
kind
in
of like
space,
an
dude.
eldritch abomination in a sense, where they went as like this eldritch abomination of just being a different dimension, and it has like
Right.
no
Well,
real
think about
physical like form. So that's why I'm
think
like,
about the
that's why
trauma
I'm a
of
little sus about it.
think about the trauma of expecting to cloak, then to transport your physical, actually transport your body across who knows how far a distance, right? Come back and then to witness or be part of some people being fused into the walls and the metal, and then the screaming and that it may be traumatizing. It'd be insanity, dude.
I, I mean, that one is just like, whew.
Right?
I mean,
Jeez, dude.
that is a fear though of teleportation. Of like,
Oh yeah.
even Star Trek explored that thought. You know, like what would happen and everything, and like dude, it's a weird concept. It's a really
Hell
weird
yeah,
concept.
dude.
Some of them, like one of the episodes that they do is where they try to tell. So, I think it's when they do a Scotty episode, and he's coming back for Star Trek Next Generation for an episode. You know, like one of those like fan episodes kind of thing. And they find him inside of like the teleporter machine and everything, and they can't save his friend because the shit's too corrupted. You know, so it's kind of like he was fused into the machine at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, in a sense, that's a basic thought of that right there. So, but like,
It also makes me think of The Prestige. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
oh,
Um,
dude, I haven't seen that
with
movie in
the
a long ass time.
Christopher Nolan movie. Spoiler for The Prestige.
Hmm.
If you guys haven't seen it already, I'm going to spoil the ending here. But
It's
it
like
turns out
another
he,
20-year-old story,
yeah,
probably.
really. I know. I was just thinking that, dude. But essentially, like the ending, there's this rival between these two magicians, right? And one of them figures out how to clone himself, and he
Hmm.
clones himself every night. The clone uh, appears way up at the stage, right? And he kills himself. He drops into a thing of water and dies. And the question is like, is that him? Is he? Is that him over there? Is it a different person? At that point, is it even him when you're teleporting? Is that teleportation? Is that cloning? What is? It's this weird kind of thing of he's tricking people to think he's teleporting, but it's really kind of this weird, bizarre thing in the background.
Yeah, it's this like weird, bizarre concept of like, is it are you really you if you're doing
Right.
that?
Exactly. Yeah, I
Like
was
when
that
you
was fascinating.
teleport, is it really you or is it a copy of
Right? Is
you?
it just gonna be a copy of you, and they just yeah, they just integrate your old self?
But that leads into the question, do you have a soul or are you a machine?
Or you just atoms and pieces put together and with
Exactly. Are
electricity
you
coming
a
in.
materialistic being in a
Hmm.
sense where you're atoms and everything, or does your consciousness show that you have a soul?
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty
So,
pretty fascinating, dude. Pretty big
I mean,
question.
that right there would be an interesting debate,
Oh
just to
yeah.
have with anyone. I mean, because it's an interesting concept. Do you have a soul or not? I
Yes.
personally think people have souls. What happens to them?
I do too.
That can go anywhere, honestly.
So many possibilities at that point. Yeah. Just with the unknown of things. I mean, talk about unexplained events. That's the biggest
Yeah,
one. Oh
exactly. I mean that's honestly most people's fear of death is
yeah.
they don't know what happens afterwards. And when you start
Exactly.
thinking about that, people are like, "Ah, jeez."
But it's funny. I was just listening to another podcast, and they were talking about this, and one of the people on there asked why do people fear death so much when they they were born and they know what being born like was before and it was nothingness, and why do you fear that? And the thing is like, we don't really know what comes after because we've been before. We all remember, or at least know we didn't have any memories before, but no one has come back from that we know has come back to tell us what's beyond, and so it's this fascinating a big
Well,
unknown.
that leads me to kind of something me and you were talking about a little bit ago before this, near death experiences.
Hmm.
Like there's plenty of stories where people have died, came back, been
And they
resuscitated.
all have a lot of similar stories too, which is so interesting.
Yeah, going to heaven, going to
Seeing
hell,
lights
nothing.
or seeing,
A fading light or
or
bright
being out
light
of
coming
body,
in.
seeing their own body. Sometimes you'll see
Yeah,
when you're
out of body experience because of the near death experience and like tons of different things, and there's there's like a lot of different questions with it, and some people want to say it's like, oh no, it's just your brain like firing certain things off, showing you certain images, this and that, and then like people who have had and talked about like, nah man, like some of them, like dude, I swear I went to hell, man. I swear I
mm,
went to hell, and then some of them even talk about like going to heaven, meeting their family, blah blah blah, talking to Jesus or this and that, or like whatever spiritual being they believe in, and some of them even feel as if they've had like, and again, how truthful these are, I don't know. I find it very
yeah, okay.
interesting, fascinating.
And then if you want to play devil's advocate, you come back from the other side and you say, well, it could just be a rush of DMT you're getting that's kind of making you feel like you're having these visual or these kind of experiences
It,
in a way.
exactly. DMT, chemical releases inside of the brain that's trying to make you feel, trying to help you process what's going on. And then not even just that. You even have the people who want to believe that it's your brain dying, so it's doing anything it can to survive,
Hmm.
basically. So because you're being deprived of oxygen, you're hallucinating in certain ways, and it's causing these rush of chemicals, the DMT and a few other things that's causing you to see these. But who knows, man?
Now,
I I've personally never had a near death experience.
thank God.
Knock on wood.
Let's keep it that way.
Knock on wood. Knock on
Uh,
wood.
Now, as we're getting closer to our time here, man, I want to ask you, like, do you have a favorite like movie, like, unexplained event or otherwise? Do you have like a favorite movie or show that comes to your mind when you kind of think of these things?
Um, Besides X Files.
Right, exactly.
uh,
I know my answer, my pick, but I'll let you go first, man, if you want, or I'll go first if you want to.
yeah, you go ahead and go first because this is probably going to take me a moment.
Yeah, no worries. So for me, I think when I think of this kind of stuff, it makes me think of the anime Steins Gate. I always think of, and for those, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but there's a bit of a time aspect to it. and it's about an experiment, just like the Philadelphia experiment, and actually I think it's based on a real guy. We could do probably the whole episode on him, but I'm pretty sure it's inspired by a real individual who's a kind of his own conspiracy legend or urban legend about a time
Who's the
traveler.
guy?
He's a famous internet time traveler, I believe.
Oh, oh.
But Stein's, I think
There's
it's
a few. There's a few of them. One of them's
his name's John Titor. John Titor.
John Titor. I
No,
think
Titor. Titor. John Titor. John Titor was claimed to be a soldier from the year 2036 and was sent to 1975 to retrieve an IBM 5100.
And he like revealed himself on forums, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so
Yeah,
the
yeah, I know
character
that
of
one.
Steins
Yeah,
Gate
yeah.
is actually based on is well, there's a whole thing about it essentially, but he's based on John Titor.
That's
And so
hilarious, dude. A
yeah,
lot of
it's
people
yeah.
think that if that's a hoax, it was based off of Terminator or like Blade Runner and stuff like
Nah.
that, like a combo of that kind of thing. But
Yeah, dude. I always like that. I
there's
thought that was so funny. You know, like it's got a connection to real life urban legend conspiracy.
Mhm. It's always so fucking funny, dude. So
Right.
funny. But so for mine, I would have to say, besides X-Files, the one thing I would always like to think of is either a guilty pleasure of mine, Independence Day,
Good
or
choice.
even the movie Outlander.
Really?
And
I don't
it's
think I've seen Outlander.
dude, it is it's honestly a really good movie in my
Really?
opinion. It has a lot of the cheesy like action stuff, but the concept of
Mhm.
it works really well. Where it's the Norse times, and
Huh.
basically what ends up happening is that they're during Eric the Viking's time, and there's this guy from outer space who crash lands
Whoa.
on into one of their lakes, and he brings with him like this like demon looking thing, basically like a dragon kind of stuff, and it starts hunting the Norse people and everything because it looks like him.
Like, oh,
They're
really?
humanoid in appearance, so he like kind of integrates with them, kind of keeps it a secret that he's like this alien person and everything. He just says he's from a faraway land. And once when they're like, oh well, like this thing's killing everybody, blah blah blah, you're starting a bunch of shit. And he's like, yeah, I know, I gotta hunt it, gotta kill it, blah blah blah, it's my duty, I'm the one who accidentally brought it here. And he goes through and like starts this whole thing, but the whole concept of it is that he stays with his people, with those
Mm.
people, and like
Mm-hmm.
decides like, okay, I'm not gonna send my people here because we would fucking kill them. Fuck that.
Well, so he kind of has a change of heart in a way.
In a sense, yeah. And even when I was doing, in all honesty, when you see the main character Harvey, uh,
Oh, it's Jim Caviezel, dude. Oh shit.
yeah, Jim Caviezel. That's it. I was about to say Harvey
Dude,
Keitel,
I love him,
but
dude.
Jim Caviezel. When you see that stuff, that's actually one of my inspirations when designing Titus.
Oh, really? That's interesting, dude. Oh, that's really interesting, man.
So
Titus from our comic, me and him do a
Project
a
R,
part.
yes,
Yeah,
one of the
exactly. Yeah.
main characters of Project R,
Mm-hmm,
yes.
mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things I always think about. But when it comes to anime, I always think of Gantz.
Interesting.
I
Really?
always think of Gantz, dude. It is
That's
so
yeah.
good.
Yeah, it definitely
So
has that
good.
unexplained
Anime,
phenomena for
manga.
sure feel to it, man. Where you're
Hmm.
like, what the hell is happening right now?
Not, not even just the unexplainable, but like once when you get further on and they explain
Mm.
everything, you're still like, what?
That's true. That's what's so cool about it. They kind of have these layers where you start learning more, and then you think what you know what's going on, then you realize you didn't know, and then you learn more, and then it keeps going like that. You keep realizing you just don't know what you think you know,
In a sense, it keeps doing M. Night Shyamalan twist, but it
but in
keeps
a good
doing it
way.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, where it's like where it's actually been thought out since the beginning and well plotted and yeah, everything kind of fits together.
Yeah, by the time everything happens, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Like
Jeez,
this,
man. Yeah, I
this
gotta catch
is
up on it. I'm on.
whoa.
I think I'm on the Omnibus Volume 2, so I gotta catch up. I think they have a couple more out. I should pick up.
I
Catch
don't
up.
know on how many there are. I think there was like 300 chapters or something for it,
Really.
but I mean it's really good. It is really good from
Yeah,
beginning
the
to end.
omnibus ones are good because they have 3 volumes all in one book, so you get a lot of good, a lot of material to read there.
Hmm. Now, if I were to bring in like a horror aspect, of course you got to
Mm.
think of aliens,
Oh, I was thinking
or
Berserk, dude.
Alien, or even Star Trek, those kinds of things.
You know what I would?
But
You know what's kind of a side tangent here, but we are the comic guys. There's a fascinating comic that came out. I think I want to say last year, but it's a new Alien comic that came out, and it's
mhm.
based on the original screenplay that before it got like edited, I think, or whatever, before it got put into a movie form. It's like based on it's like the original, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Yes, so it's
I
pretty
think
cool, dude.
even I mean, of course I got to bring in Hellstar Ramana from Junji Ito. I
I'm
mean, that
still,
is
dude.
just
I'm reading that right now. In fact, actually, we could talk just a little briefly about that right now, because essentially the story of Ramina is there's a planet that's going on this weird trajectory all over, and this scientist who discovered it names it after his daughter Remina, and then it's just I'm not finished with the story, but the planet essentially starts coming to Earth, and people are like thinking that it's going to kill them, and they see it destroying all the other planets in its path, and so it's like this horror of like people start freaking out, like, are these people summoning them, and what is happening, and why is it coming towards it? Like essentially like this unexplained phenomenon of this unknown planet, traveling into our solar system and coming right towards us, and the fear of what that would produce in people.
I mean that is a if you want to talk about an Eldritch abomination, that's it.
Jesus Christ, hell yeah.
Dude,
Yeah,
that
it's
is
really good
it,
so far,
man.
dude. I'm enjoying that book, dude.
That
It's
is
intense.
it
It's
right
actually one
there.
of his
Holy
most
shit.
intense books, I think. Like in terms
Dude,
of
it is
visceral.
so good. It is so
Yeah.
good.
I'm on chapter
Um,
3 right now.
one good story that like if anybody wants to think about conspiracy, like since we're kind of on the topic, a
Hmm.
story about conspiracy, everybody's got to play or at least watch the stuff for Metal Gear Solid. That's what it's all
Hmm.
about in a sense.
True, man. That's a good
Not
point.
necessarily like conspiracy theories, but that vein,
Yeah,
within its
that's a
own
really good
world.
point, dude.
And then another one of my favorites is Final Fantasy Tactics, because what I talked about is that like you as the main character stumble upon this like secret society that's trying to take over everything, and they're doing it in like this really fucked up way where they created an entire wars, famines, and all this stuff over years and years, like decades of fighting and being able to like create this perfect opportunity, and have been searching for what are called the Zodiac stones. And they're trying to like summon this beast and everything, and you as the main character have to stop it. And nobody really wants to believe you about it.
Hmm.
But
Kind of like make it so you seem crazy in a way.
in a sense, yeah, but you are the secret like hero basically who saved time or like their society, but blah 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 kind of thing. It is an
Hmm.
RPG, so you go to save the world, of course.
We gotta be the hero, of
But
course.
like the way that it's done is so well thought out and like so well planned, and how everything comes about, you're just like, holy shit.
Hmm.
Like your first playthrough, you do not expect what happens. You're like,
Damn.
God damn. I thought
Jesus,
it was
dude.
this going on, but now it's that. What?
Damn. Yeah, dude, there's a lot of good stuff. Like, there's even the Call of Cthulhu game they came out with like a year or so ago.
Hmm.
There's a lot of, honestly, a lot of really good horror games out there, and really good kind of mystery, conspiracy, and just unknown kind of things involving the supernatural and the unknown.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, even one that's another JRPG that I've played is Persona 4. That's one of the like coolest fucking um not only like RPGs, but like the mythologies they use, like and all the references and all that stuff to not even just like Japanese, but Western mythologies as well, and like certain aspects of like Eastern deities and all that within like the creatures, the characters, and all that kind of stuff. But there's even like a mystery portion that you have to do and all that kind of stuff. It's like, whoa, like these people actually thought this kind of stuff out. So, and this is
Mhm.
why I kind of think about like on how what we were talking about with conspiracies and everything, even JFK and all that, like kind of a good way to wrap this up or wrap it around full circle is that it seems that a lot of people don't want to give the credit to where the artists think outside of the box, and then lo and behold, there are certain similarities that we
Mm.
refuse to ignore that have actually happened through those.
Exactly. The connections, the weird things, the coincidences, the synchronicity. And I always go back to that quote. I think I told you this even when we were just, kind of coming up with this idea for the show, was that quote from the X Files where he says, essentially says, "Why don't you, despite all the evidence to the contrary, why do you still believe?" And Fox Mulder says, "Because despite all the evidence to the contrary, or rather, despite all the evidence to the contrary, is not entirely dissuasive. In other words, despite everything that mounts up and says that these things cannot possibly exist, that there's no way, there's still that shred of evidence that says, but wait, but maybe, but what?" And so I feel like it's that little bit of shred, that little bit that makes us question and makes us wonder, and it kind of makes everyone like us so curious about these kind of topics because
Well,
we can't let that little bit go. We have to know. We need to know.
Exactly, and that's even a good way to explain like my way of thinking with the Wendigo, because like yeah, sure, you could say it's like this like disease or like this certain thing that's going on, but why is there like these stories of it saying things to people?
Exactly. Why are there countless, eyewitnesses that keep coming back, and why is there this fascination if there wasn't something there? You know,
Exactly.
and so
And that's kind of what leads into that whole thought of like you just got to really think outside of the box really when it comes to different unexplainable things or
hmm
even to like circumstantial things to where you have to like really try to think outside of your limits to
open your mind.
open your mind, and not only that, just experience a different perspective.
Yeah, that's totally true, man. I feel like everyone can always learn new things by letting themselves see things from new eyes like that, whether it be, from anything in particular, but especially with these kind of unknown events, these kind of supernatural things and these kind of different ideas. Just let yourself kind of be enveloped in them, man.
Hmm.
Yeah, man. Well, this has been a
Yeah,
lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking with you on this. I think this was a great first episode. Awesome podcast pilot. How'd you feel, man?
I mean, I feel it went great. This is always a subject that I love, unexplainable things, and not even just that, to go even further, just like the questions of not like our world, but also reality and different concepts of what is possible and the probabilities and everything.
Right? It kind of gives us a new opportunity because me and you always talk about this kind of stuff anyway. So it's like a new opportunity for us to show what we're passionate about and continue the conversation and hopefully invite all of you guys listening into the conversation as well and to ask your questions and to find out what is interesting to you. And if you guys have any suggestions for upcoming episodes, if you want us to see us cover a particular topic for an entire episode or anything like that, or if you have any suggestions, definitely send us that suggestions our way. We're always open to that, and we like the feedback. Tell us if you like the open-ended format, if you'd like something a little more structured, a little more narrative, perhaps, or if you want us to keep doing this open-ended thing, or maybe a mixture of both. So any kind of feedback would be great. We always love it. Um, and definitely give us a like and a subscribe if you can on our YouTube channel here. We'll be coming back. This is our pilot episode, so we'll be nailing down a schedule here shortly and letting you know once we come back for the full run. But again, the more views, the more comments, the more likely chance you'll see us coming back for more of these episodes. So definitely appreciate all of the feedback. And if you want to follow us online, you can check us out on Twitter at Wikid Publishing. And I'm also on Twitter at Nubguy, Nubgui. Where can people follow you, Matt?
I'm personally at on Twitter with the handle at Matt B underscore Zulos. So MATTB underscores SULOS.
Excellent. Thank you guys. And of course, if you're not familiar with Wicked Publishing, uh, we indie comics. We publish indie comics and manga. So check us out at wickedpublishing.net, and you can see all the different series that we have on display, and maybe see something that you like for yourself. And of course, we'll be back again with more mysteries, more conspiracies, more cryptids, more awesome things that go bump in the night. And we'll be here to walk you through it all and explain every little nook and cranny, every little detail. And so, thanks again,
I mean,
guys.
here.
This is yeah. As long as we're not abducted, man. That's right.
Not only
As long
that,
as
I
we're not
mean,
abducted
we'll
first.
be answering all the questions that we can because you got to try to ask all the questions to get every single possible view.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's the greatest thing about this kind of a open format is asking the questions that need to be asked, like the ones that we have those lingering questions about, things that people are kind of wondering about, these big ideas and these big questions. So yeah, I definitely feel like this is going to be a lot of fun, man. We're just getting started. We're going to be back with tons of new stuff and diving probably into some really interesting stuff, maybe stuff you've never even heard of. We wanted to start off a little easier way in there with some things you may have been a little familiar with, but we're definitely going to start diving into some really kind of far off, kind of under the stone, off the beaten path kind of things here. So
Oh,
definitely
yeah,
stick with us.
definitely.
Yeah, and we'll be back, everyone. And just remember the old X Files thing: the truth is out there. It's always a classic to go back to. And we'll see you guys on a future episode of the Wicked Files. So everyone.